Welcome to the Bama Bo Show. I am your host, Bama Bo. Now, I'm just going to warn you guys that today's show is going to have so much information and content that, well, your heads may explode. At least I know mine might. Because when you have a guy like Drew DeArmond on here, this is a must listen. He's going to break down everything Alabama football related and hopefully get all of our questions answered. I'm not going to leave anything out. I'm going to pick his brain about middle linebackers, centers, you name it, I'm going to ask it. I want to find out everything, and this is the guy to go to. Also, stay tuned to the end of the show because I am going to announce the winner of my giveaway. So yay, we'll get to that at the end. In the meantime, let's kick this thing off with Drew. I can't wait.
He's a good man. He's God-fearing. As long as the tide is winning, it's in his blood and it runs down to the bone.
Welcome to the show, Drew. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Bama Bo. How are you?
I'm wonderful. And listen, the audience has been anxious to hear from you. I've been getting text messages and DMs and stuff. It's that time of year where everybody wants information. And I'm going to start with, first of all, Drew, okay, it has been so quiet at Alabama up until yesterday. So I'm going to start there. What do you know about Kedrick James and what happened with that?
Well, I can just say within the last several days, he had the third strike and you're out. I mean, he's had some ongoing issues since he's been at Alabama. You're trying to be respectful here, on this public forum. But again, you can kind of put two and two together. But he recently had his third strike, and they're going to allow him to go into the transfer portal and leave the program. It's I'd say it's probably really similar to what happened to Kyrie McDonald, who's now at Cincinnati, who is a safety at Alabama from James Clemens High School near here in my community.
Yeah.
And then Vandarius Cowan.
Yeah.
I guess the analogy I made last night was he's the third stooge. I mean, you got Mo, Larry, and Curly. all three of them, ran out of chances. Vandarius was more, just all kinds of things, whether it be class, conduct, he just didn't want to toe the line. And then I think both with Kyrie and now with Kedrick James, I think, they had some issues with some off the field things that, you want to kind of keep that in house a little bit. But let's just say they had some issues and they had chances, and they were given every opportunity, especially Kedrick, because he's very talented. They tried to get him a lot of help. He was seeing Chris Herron. If anybody knows who Chris Herron is, years ago he played at Fresno State, and before that Boston College, and then went on to play overseas in the NBA. Very talented basketball player. He's now a counselor who tries to help youth. He does a lot of public speaking. I know Herron was working with Kedrick. He'd been doing better, but then he regressed, and so he had that third strike, and they're gonna try help him transfer, but I just think Alabama's ready to move on, and it's sad because if he had been out of trouble, you saw him catch a touchdown pass in the 8A game. I think he would have been the starter at tight end.
Yeah.
I will say the tight end position is one of the big pressure points now in fall camp because I think Miller Forrestall's a little banged up right now. I don't think it's anything serious. As you know, he missed the season a couple years ago with an ACL. Then last year he was coming back from that. He's still a little banged up. I don't think it's serious. I think he'll be fine eventually, but he may not be ready to go for fall camp. So now you don't have him. You don't have Kedrick James. So the onus is going to be on Major Tennyson, who's a junior who has never done a whole lot. I mean, he's more of a blocking tight end. Than like along the lines of a Hale Hinchis, and then you got a guy that the guy that really impressed me during the spring in his position switch, and I do think it'll be permanent, especially now, and it's probably one of the reasons the coaching staff was more apt to just tell Kedrick it was time to move on is Cameron Latu.
Yes.
I mean, he's a redshirt freshman. He had a really nice spring. They had moved him from outside linebacker to H-back. He just needed to get bigger in his upper body. I don't know how much weight he's added yet, but he was a natural receiver. He did a really nice job. He's along the lines of the same style as maybe a Miller Forrestall. And then you've got Jaleel Billingsley, the freshman from Chicago, who I don't think he'll be ready yet. He'll probably redshirt, but this does kind of expedite that. His maybe development there. They may try to try to move him along a little quicker. But also Michael Parker. He's a redshirt freshman from my area, Westminster here in Huntsville. His two brothers walked on at Alabama. I just heard from a very good source last night that he's up to 240 pounds. He's listed at 216 on the roster. That's not accurate.
Okay.
He's about to be in the 240s. So he's someone that will get an opportunity now to maybe make a move. And then I know you may have asked about him. I know a lot of people asked me about him in the spring. There's a redshirt senior named Giles Amos.
Yes.
I met his family. He's somebody that's a fifth-year senior who did a nice job in the spring when Kedrick was already in the doghouse. So, Giles, he may be a guy that, like Kelly Johnson back in 2012, who kind of came out of nowhere to be an H-back, big-time blocker as a walk-on that earned a scholarship and earned a place at the table at Alabama. Amos may be one of those guys too. So, they could still add a graduate, but I think really with Latu's development in the spring and Amos stepping up, I think if they can get Miller healthy, and that's going to be a big key, I think Alabama still likes where they are with the tight ends. But don't discount the fact that maybe an offensive lineman, I know, early in his career, Jedrick Wills did this. They could take a guy like a Scott Lashley or Landon Dickerson or even a Chris Owens, say if Landon Dickerson moves to center and beats him out, that could be developed into that kind of Brandon Green type blocking tight end.
Oh, good point. I hadn't even thought of that. But yeah.
Right.
I was actually really impressed too with Cameron Latu. I liked that switch, and I think you're right. I think maybe he's kind of sealed that spot as well. I could see. I know there was a lot of praise from him, his high school coach, talking about he was actually a really good tight end then as well.
Yeah, I mean, well, he played both ways in high school, and he came to Alabama wanting to be a defensive player, but I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just not sure how good of a fit he was. And the outside linebacker room right now is packed with, it's stacked with talent, and I'm not sure he would be on the field, but he can get on the field as an H-back. I mean, and I thought he looked like a natural receiver in the spring.
Yes.
He looked like he took to the position. Now it's just going to be, are you going to block? But I thought he gave effort. I thought he it was a work in progress, but I certainly think that he's got a chance to still develop into a key piece of the puzzle.
And let's stay on the offensive side of the ball, Drew. And this is a question I get asked a lot. I'm sure you do as well. Let's start at the center. Who do you see as the starting lineup on that offensive line?
Well, I mean, right now I still lean more toward Chris Owens. He's a guy that from Fort Worth, Texas, that could have gone to Stanford. They don't cut corners in academics. He could have gone to Harvard. He's very smart. I know Saban was pleased with him in the spring with his leadership. He's a redshirt junior, so he's mature. Certainly Emil Ekiyor has a lot of potential, and now they've added Landon Dickerson. At the very least, Landon Dickerson will give them, a lot of depth and competition. But honestly, I still would lean to Owens. I would still lean to Owens at center, and I really think overall, as far as maybe left guard, I'm still of the opinion that Evan Neal could be, a starter as a true freshman. He's a massive kid. I do think within a year he could be a tackle, especially a left tackle. But at left guard, he looked really good. He reminded me of a little bit of a Herman Johnson kind of guy that Coach Saban had at LSU that was just a massive gargantuan kid. So I think Evan Neal and Emil Ekiyor is going to be quite a battle, at that left guard spot. Regardless, it's going to be where they're going to have some quality depth there. But I would still lean toward Evan Neal at some point in time being a starter. And then as far as, left tackle, I think that's Alex Leatherwood. I firmly believe Alex is going to develop into a first or a second round draft pick at left tackle. I think he was a fish out of water at right guard.
Yes.
He was there because, Jonah Williams wouldn't move inside and
Yes.
wanted to stay at left tackle, and you can understand that. I mean, he still ended up being a first-round draft choice. I think he'll have a nice career with Cincinnati, even though I still am of the opinion Jonah was a better right tackle than left, but
Yes.
I still think, that Leatherwood, that when you look at the second half of that Georgia game when he came in for Jonah Williams, he looks like a natural at the spot. So I think Leatherwood's locked down left tackle. Jedrick Wills locked down right. He's a massive kid with great feet. I mean, I think he could play anywhere on the O-line, but I think they want his power at right tackle. Right guard right now, it would be Cornbread, Deontay Brown, if he were not in the doghouse. But unlike Kedrick, crossing fingers, toes, and whatever, heard really good, intel that it seems that Deontay is buying in and trying to help himself and realizes that, he can play in the NFL. He just needs to toe the line, do things the right way. But I think the first 4 games that Matt Womack, the redshirt senior, will start at least. I mean, he lost his job a couple years ago. Remember, in 2017, Bama Bo, he was a starter and was all SEC.
Yes.
And then got hurt last year, hurt his foot a couple times, and he went and just had to have some surgery. And really, it was kind of a lost season for him. They've moved him from right tackle to right guard. I think you'll start the season at right guard because Saban's loyal to seniors, and then you'll probably see a rotation of him and Deontay the rest of the season. But I do think, potentially with Landon Dickerson coming into the mix, if they put him at center, when you're talking about Emil Ekiyor, Landon Dickerson, and Deontay Brown, that's some really good competition at the interior spots. Now we're just going to have to see if they can develop that kind of competition at the offensive tackle spots. Scott Lashley will probably be a guy that could get a look at that blocking tight end, but he's going to probably be the backup left tackle to Leatherwood, I would think, right now. We'll see, even though Evan Neal could see some time there as well eventually. And then, backups at right tackle. Matt Womack can see some time there. When Jedrick got hurt in the spring, he moved back out to right tackle. Tommy Brown is a redshirt freshman that could certainly see some time there. I think overall the group itself has a chance to be a much more physical group than last year and much better. And I think, I think overall, if they stay healthy, this group will be better. It has a chance to be really, really good. I know Georgia's getting all the pub as being the best in the country.
Yeah.
I still think Alabama's can be just about as good. And I really like Kyle Flood as a coach. I've had a chance to, hear him speak and be around him a little bit. And he reminds me a lot of Jeff Stoutland, who I know Alabama fans all love still.
Yes.
I mean, Stoutland did a great job for 2 years here in 2011, 2012, before going on to help Philadelphia win a Super Bowl. And I think he is an offensive line coach. I think that's what Kyle Flood is. Kyle Flood has been an offensive line coach his whole career, and he and Steve Sarkisian have a really good working relationship. So I think the offensive line's got a chance to be really good.
I do too, and I think that's what, I know you hear it too. All the Alabama fans just miss that physicality really, really bad. And I think and by the way, I get a lot of questions about Pierce Quick. Do you think he sees any playing time?
Well, I mean, I think he'll probably redshirt, but certainly he could end up seeing some time in the, if we get in the 4-game deal. I mean, right now, I think he's going to end up probably a guy that plays on the interior. But as I told you, they've already almost got a chance to be too deep along there. So he's going to have to bide his time. But I'll say this, he's another candidate. He's a good athlete that could be that blocking tight end for a year if they decided to find a role for him as a true freshman. But Pierce Quick, I really like him. He's a kid that plays his guts out. I watched him play several times at Hewitt Trustville, and especially in the bigger games against the Hoovers and the Thompsons and those in those teams of that ilk, he would play both sides. He never came off.
Yeah.
He would play offensive and defensive line. So, and I think he plays with a nasty temperament. I think I think he has the leadership traits. I think, Pierce will be a good player. I just don't know if this is going to be the year that he's a huge part of it, but I do think he will be in the future.
Yeah. And then you look at the wide receivers, which is, everybody knows about the wide receivers.
It's as good a foursome as that Alabama's ever had. I mean, in my opinion, I don't think it has a weakness. And then you inject John Mechie.
That's where I was going.
Yeah, he's got a chance to be really good. And I think some of these others, Xavier Williams, I think he's a redshirt freshman, Slade Bolden.
Yes.
I think he has a chance to be a good player. He's another redshirt freshman. And then the one that's the onus is on this year, especially with Irv Smith being gone, because I was being asked this the other day in another chat, and they're like, well, I wish we had a big, tall, wide receiver, physical receiver in the red zone. I said, well, last year that was Irv Smith. He
Yes.
was the big, tall, physical guy. He may not have been 6'4", 6'5", he was 6'2", but he ran great routes. He was physical, and he caught the ball really well with his hands. That was the red zone guy that really hurt teams. And so, but I will say this: there's one receiver on this team right now. He's a redshirt sophomore. He's got to get going because if he doesn't, he's going to get left behind. That's Terrell Shavers.
Yes.
He's got the height, 6'5", 6'6". He's got to, take a step forward and maybe get some synergy going with Tua as far as he could have that role in the goal line as being a guy around there that they maybe target in certain matchups. You can when you go 4 and 5 wide. Because with Irv they could flex him out and it was almost like having a wide receiver.
Yeah.
But he could also block, line him up in the backfield. He was a really good player. So they're going to need to. They're going to have. I don't know if they have a guy like that unless Cameron Latu. He could become that guy, but I still think there's maybe a red zone role for Terrell Shaver. So it's going to be interesting to see if he can step up and do that.
I'd like to see him come around because he is a big specimen.
Yeah, he's 6'4", 6'5".
Okay, so let's get to the backs, Drew. We've got Najee Harris and Brian Robinson. What do you see out of Trey Sanders this year?
Well, I mean, I think he can find a role. They certainly would like to have 3 backs be prominent, in the situation. I thought Jerome Ford and Shadarius Townsend did some good things in the spring. Both bring a speed element to the table.
Yeah.
But I think Trey Sanders is a little bigger, brings more physicality. He's 220 pounds. But I really love Najee. I think he's very talented. Now, he's got to do the little things right. He's got to block, catch, play without the ball. I think at certain times he hasn't done that as well. And I'm going to tell you something. Most underrated player on the whole offense that everybody's sleeping on is Brian Robinson. He's done a lot with the limited touches he's gotten, and he played for Sam Adams over at Hillcrest Tuscaloosa High School, and he learned to play without the ball. Yes, he had a 400-plus yard rushing game that set a state record against Clay Chalkville, but his senior year, they flexed him out. They threw him the ball. He'd run the ball. They would make him block in the passing game and be a decoy in the running game and be able to to block for his teammates. So he's a well-rounded player. He can block, catch, and run. He can already do that. And I'm telling you, if Najee is, I know Najee came in with a bigger reputation.
Yeah.
But if he doesn't, do the little things right, it's not going to matter. I'm telling you, he's going to be in trouble, and he may lose some playing time to Brian Robinson. I think this can be a hellacious 1-2 punch. It's going to be different because I think that it's going to be a lot of straight downhill physical pounding because of the makeup of the offensive line and because of their styles of running. But I still really like the 1-2 punch of Najee Harris, Brian Robinson. And I think Trey Sanders, with his ability to catch, run, block, he returned some kicks and at IMG, he's got a chance to get to have a role too. But he's going to have to bide his time behind the other two. But Saban has never hesitated to play 3 backs. And with Brian Robinson's versatility, being able to line up at fullback some, I still think Trey Sanders, depending on how well he works, and we haven't seen him take a rep yet, but I think he has a chance to be that 3rd back. But don't discount somebody like Jerome Ford as well, who has a lot of speed and who's a little bit different, kind of along the lines of a Kenyon Drake.
I thought Jerome Ford looked really good in the spring.
Yeah, I mean I think they still got his redshirt year, so I think he's a redshirt freshman, but he definitely is fast. He definitely showed some flashes. So that's going to be an interesting battle, that 3rd back behind Brian Robinson. And, of course, as we said, Najee Harris.
And all this, so we've talked about the entire offense, Drew, and it all hinges on the health of Tua Tagovailoa.
Yeah, I mean, Tua definitely has to be healthy, but I think it's being overblown. Oh, he's fragile. He's this, he's that. Look, Jalen Hurts missed more games than Tua. Okay, that's a fact.
Yeah, and a fair point, yes.
Yeah, so, does Tua, is he going to have to, make better business decisions sometimes? Yes. In other words, throw the ball away, don't take on tacklers, be smart, of course. But, there was questions about Josh Jacobs' durability going into last year too, and then boom, first round draft choice. So I just think with Tua, you know, people don't say this enough. What if he's better? And he could be, because he didn't have that last year. He had not started one game until the game against Louisville, and he started the whole season 43 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Okay, nobody's ever done that at Alabama. If I know they need to run the ball a little bit more, and I know that they need to go to more play action. He may not get as many attempts this year, but and he's going to have to not be as aggressive and go for the home run and see the check down, and every now and then take a page out of the A.J. McCarron playbook. But I'll say this: I think Steve Sarkisian is a great coordinator. I think it wasn't the sexiest hire because he'd been there before, but when you peel back the onion, his resume is as good as anyone's. It's as good as Lane Kiffin's.
Yeah.
And so I know some people, well, he didn't get, the Falcons back to the Super Bowl. Well, that wasn't all his fault. His second year, he was more comfortable. They had the number 6 offense in the NFL. And then the red zone offense was affected a little bit by injuries to the offensive line and Devontae Freeman, but they were still very productive. The biggest problem with the Falcons was injuries on defense. It just decimated them. So I think that he was productive with Atlanta, but I think also he's more well suited to the college game. And his college resume is spotless. He helped USC, along with Kiffin, dominate. He did a great job taking an 0-12 Washington program, making them very competitive. And then he was at USC. And the thing is, the Tua Tagovailoa and Talia Tagovailoa, the family, they have tremendous trust in Steve Sarkisian, and I think he is going to go back. And Sark, if you look at his lineage, he likes to pound the ball and be physical. And I think he actually is a better fit with Nick Saban than Lane Kiffin.
No, and I agree. And I'll be the first to say it was a little bit of a head scratcher when they brought him back. But then when I got to learning more about what a good relationship he had with Tua, I said, okay, I can see this. Like, this is a good fit. I just got to ask you, Drew, and this is just kind of off topic, but I read all this stuff about Tua being overhyped. Like, what? How is he overhyped? And I know this was his first year starting, just like you said, and everybody grows and everybody learns. Why is he taking so much criticism?
Because the quarterback always gets more criticism than he should when they lose, and more credit than they win. If they had beaten Clemson to be 15-0, he'd be being called the greatest player in college football, maybe since Tim Tebow. It wouldn't even be close, and he would be considered the lock first pick of the draft. He's still getting buzzed for that, but it wouldn't even be a contest. And Alabama would be the number 1 team in the country, and it'd be a runaway train. But see, this is all great. Go ahead and call Clemson the best team in the history of the world. Go ahead and say Trevor Lawrence is the greatest quarterback of all time. If I'm Tua Tagovailoa, I just use it as motivation. I mean, I think he certainly, but he didn't play as poorly as people try to say in the national championship game anyway. He threw for 290 yards. Yes, he made 2 terrible decisions. There is no doubt about that. He threw 2 interceptions. But again, the red zone offense kind of broke down a little bit, and then Alabama, the inability to run the football in short yardage, came back to bite them. But he still played pretty well. A lot better than Jalen Hurts did in the 2016 game. But in this instance, Alabama's defense in 2016 was really otherworldly, almost as good as 1992's group.
Amen.
But they just didn't get enough help from their offense. And, of course, some people blame that on Steve Sarkisian. But the big blame for that was not Jalen Hurts. It wasn't Steve Sarkisian. It was Lane Kiffin's lack of focus and being off in Neverland instead of being on the sidelines coaching the game for Alabama.
No, you're 100% right. 100% right. And so, okay, let's switch to the defense. I got some questions for you on the defense. All right. This is just me, so of course I want Drew DeArmond's opinion. I think the D-line is going to be really, really solid. I think the secondary is going to be super good. I think my biggest concern is at middle linebacker. But just talk a little bit about who you think will be starting on the D-line, first of all.
Well, on the D line, I think right now, after what I saw in the spring and I was really impressed with what I saw in high school, but you never know how it's going to carry over, but it certainly did. DJ Dale is going to start at the nose. I mean, he was special in the spring. He reminded me of Deron, the way he just kind of took to everything and did such an outstanding job. I think the two defensive ends are going to be Raekwon Davis and Rack made a great decision to come back. He needs to get his head out of his ass. He needs to refocus on, his sophomore year when he was really good and really productive. Less talk, less bitch into the officials, and let's play.
Yeah.
And that's what he needs to do. He has the talent. He is a little bit unusual because he's a 6'7" defensive lineman. When usually in those kind of situations, you see these guys are no taller than 6'5". So he is a unique specimen, but I think he can be a really good player. I think the guy has a chance to break out a la, and they'll say that every year, Quinnen Williams, because Quinnen came out of nowhere to become a full-time starter and then third pick in the draft to the Jets. This year's candidate is LeBron Ray, and I grew up, I watched him grow up here, I should say, and watched him at James Clemens High School, from his 10th grade year on, just get better and better. And I just really think LeBron's got a chance to break out. When he came in, for Isaiah Buggs last year, and when he was called upon, especially in the Auburn game, I thought they didn't miss a beat. And I think he'll be ready. And I think those three guys will be your starters. And I think, guys like Justin Ebogbe, Byron Young, I think will without a doubt can help as far as the depth, because I think this young group of defensive linemen and Antonio Alfano also has a chance to be special, and I think they'll provide depth throughout the season, and they'll be better. And that's the beautiful thing about this. They should be better by the 15th game than they are by the first.
Yes.
Of course, when they first start. But I mean, I think that overall, when you think about it, and then you think about another couple of the young guys, who played a little bit last year. They had another couple of sophomores. Now they're sophomores. They were freshmen a year ago, but I still think 90. I guess 90 is what I'm trying to say. Sometimes even I go blank on the names, but I mean, but I still think he has a chance to be really good, because I still think he played some last year because they tried to develop him a little bit. And that's kind of what Saban does, but I still think when Stephon Wynn, my bad.
There you
Stephon
go.
Wynn, Stephon Wynn has a chance to still, be a factor, because and a matter of fact, I'm now seeing that he got his red shirt. I wasn't sure. He was kind of on the edge there. I was hoping he did, but Stephon Wynn from the state of South Carolina, he's got a chance to maybe, break into that two deep. Fedarian Mathis is very versatile. He played a lot last year. He'll be a redshirt sophomore. A lot of people thought he was going to start until DJ Dale kind of took his job. But when you think about that, you think about the Stephon Wynns, and you think about Fedarian Mathis. Those are two of the younger guys that I think overall can be, really good players. And see, I didn't even bring up Ismail Sopsher, because I think he's got some weight issues, and I think he'll eventually help them, but maybe not next year. But I still think when you got that, that starting group, as I said, of Raekwon Davis, LeBron Ray, DJ Dale, you've got some depth there. Fedarian Mathis, Stephon Wynn, Antonio Alfano, Justin Ebogbe. I think with those freshmen and Byron Young, by the time you hopefully develop your team into November, Alabama ought to have a solid 2 to 3 deep on that defensive line, and that's what made that 2016 group so good. And to me, that's what's exciting. So, but to your other point, the big pressure point to me of the whole defense is the weak side linebacker next to Dylan Moses. I mean, certainly, I think that Dylan has a chance to be an All-American, but I still think somebody asked me this the other day, who is going to, start next to him. Based on what I saw in the spring, if he continues to get better, I don't think there's any doubt, and he surprised me, but I think Shane Lee, the true freshman from Baltimore, can eventually take those snaps next to Dylan Moses. Now, do I think he'll do it the first game? Maybe not, because Joshua McMillan is a senior who is not supremely talented, but knows what to do. It wouldn't surprise me if Joshua McMillan, the redshirt senior from Memphis, is in the starting lineup for the first game. But I think Shane Lee quickly after that could end up being a guy that really pushes because he was showing a lot of leadership from people I talked to. A quick grasp of the defense, which is huge. And I mean, he'll still be swimming some, but he had a really good idea of things. He had 7 tackles in the 8A game and was really impressive and started pushing in all the scrimmages too. Now, I still think I'm not giving up on a guy like Jalen Moody, who had an interception in the 8A game, or even Ale Cahoe, because I checked on Ale yesterday. As you know, Bama Bo, he missed the start of spring.
Yeah.
And then he came back. There's a lot of rumors about him. He has had some emotional problems. I've heard he's fine now. He was really good on special teams last year. So I think the key, though, to me in fall camp is how quickly does Shane Lee keep developing, and then Jalen Moody and Ale Cahoe, because you know what you've got with Joshua McMillan, but you just want to see how those other 3 young guys. I don't have a lot. Markel Benton may surprise me, but I don't really have a lot of, faith in him right now. We'll see. I see him more as a special teams guy, but those other 3, I think they've got a chance to. This is a golden opportunity to see some time next to Dylan Moses, and then Christian Harris, the true freshman, from Baton Rouge. He hadn't played enough linebacker yet, so to me, he will be a really good player in the future. But I don't expect him to push for a starting job as a true freshman. I think since he didn't go through spring, I think Shane Lee going through spring was very important. And if he can have the kind of impact needed, he could maybe be the final piece of the puzzle. Because as you know, the outside linebackers, if Terrell Lewis is healthy and Anthony Jennings is healthy, that's the best tandem in the country. I mean, I know I'm putting a lot on Lewis. He's never really got a chance to play a lot, but he was a terror last spring.
Yeah.
And he has first round talent. And then you got a guy like Chris Allen who was having a breakout spring.
Yes.
The year before he got injured. He's really talented. So and then you've got Ayabi Anoma, who, since Coach Sal came and put a foot up his ass, I think, I really thought he turned it on in the spring and started to show the case, the talent you could see on film in high school. I think, and then that doesn't even take into account, Kelvin Harris and then of course, Jerez Parks. It's going to be a very good outside linebacker group, no doubt.
Yeah. And then, I thought the key injuries last year, Drew, was Terrell Lewis and then also Trayvon Diggs. I don't think we realized early on how much that was going to hurt us with him. A healthy Trayvon Diggs, I think that secondary is going to be good this year. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think it has a chance to be really good. I mean, I think Diggs and Surtain and Josh Jobe. Yeah, Diggs being healthy is very important. There's no question because, but I think Jobe's progress is key too because if Jobe can continue to build on what we saw in the national championship game against Clemson, I think when you're talking about them being in nickel a lot, you'll see Jobe and Diggs be the corners, Surtain be the nickel, and then your 2 safeties are going to be Shy Carter and Xavier McKinney. Shy can play anywhere in the secondary. From the Arkansas game on last year, he was very, very good. He's very smart, very intelligent. And then I think X is the alpha dog of the whole group. I think he's a leader. I think he has a chance to develop into a first-round draft pick. He'll hit. He can be and I think also a guy that kind of took advantage of, the spring last year because Shy Carter was coming back from a sports hernia, so he was a little bit limited. And because of Deontay Thompson going pro, I thought it was key that Jared Maiden stepped up. He's a senior. He's in his last go-round, and I think he's earned the confidence of the coaching staff. He would probably be your guy to come in and dime. They could put Xavier McKinney down in the box. He's physical enough to tackle, make Jared Maiden the other safety along with Shyheim Carter. So I just think right now the secondary looks pretty good. And that doesn't even bring into account a true freshman like Jordan Battle that I know, Coach Saban's really high on. But I think if they can keep that group healthy and if Josh Jobe, is ready for prime time, he's the key because Josh Jobe, to me, with his talent and length and ability to cover, if they could move Surtain inside to to the nickel, where he could maybe blitz a little bit, and I think with his length and athleticism himself, I think he could, he would be really tough to deal with for some of these slot receivers, because I think he's quick enough to still be able to stay with them in man coverage, but physical enough also to maybe jam them. I still think this secondary has got a chance to be really, really good.
Yeah, and I know, Drew, when I left the spring game, Josh Jobe was the guy that I couldn't stop talking about. I thought he was maybe one of the most impressive players in that game. I'm a big fan.
Right. And then we heard all about him coming out of, South Florida. He went to Connecticut to a prep school for his senior year, but he was one of these guys that we probably should have played more last year.
Yeah.
He maybe had some issues picking up the defense. He may have been swimming a little bit, but certainly he was ready by the postseason. And just like Deontay Thompson the year before, we kind of saw him break out, and I think he has a chance to really help this team because if you could move Surtain inside, that would be something that could give. When you're talking about three talents at the cornerback position, like Trevon Diggs, he was playing great ball before he got hurt against Arkansas. But problem may have been an early entry candidate. And then you're talking about Surtain and Jobe. That's three big time talents in your secondary. And then you've got the experience of guys like Shy Carter, who can play everywhere. If somebody gets banged up, you can plug him in at star. You can plug him in at corner. You can plug him in at safety. So you've got him back there. So, mentally he should have everything. And he's a quiet leader, too. And then you've got Xavier McKinney and then Jared Maiden, a senior. It's a very experienced secondary, and if there's a better pass rush in front of it, that's why, to me, this defense has a chance to be much better than last year, more consistent, and also because of the coaching changes, because Pete Golding, he's the pressure point because he took over after the first month last year. It was kind of overwhelming. Tosh Lupoy was over his head as a DC. He'll now have it all to himself, but he's got help in Sal Sunseri, who's been a veteran, who's been around, who can help him, and then Charles Kelly, the new safeties coach, who's somebody that won a national championship at Florida State. He did a nice job at Tennessee last year for Coach Pruitt, and he's another set of eyes that should be able to really help back there in that secondary.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. And all right, so before I let you go, Drew, I got one more question for you, and this is just kind of just picking your brain a little bit. But if you looked at the schedule, what game is most concerning to you this year? Now, this is our regular schedule.
You talking about regular season?
Regular season.
Well, I mean, to be honest, Tina, I think the schedule's pretty manageable. It's one of the easier ones in the history of Alabama football under Nick Saban, because there's not really that game you look to be a measuring stick out of conference. All of them should be shellackings, for lack of a better term. A little bit, as you look at how it sets up, though they get remember this year they get the double bye. They do get a bye before going to Texas A&M, and that's a game that's very dangerous in College Station. But they do get 2 weeks to prepare for that game. Quite frankly, Jerry Pruitt doesn't concern me. They don't have a good enough roster. Neither does Arkansas. As usual, though, if they can navigate Texas A&M, I think it's just going to be the amen corner in November. I mean, because LSU is coming to Tuscaloosa, but that's going to be a war like it always is. Mississippi State's a little dangerous because it's in Starkville, and they'll have a team kind of laying in the weeds. But quite frankly, I think the two games that should be the most worrisome are LSU at home, just because they have a talented roster and they've whipped themselves up into a frenzy thinking they're going to beat Alabama. But I just don't see them coming to Tuscaloosa and winning. But I think the three games that you need to look at are Texas A&M on the road in College Station, LSU, and then Auburn, because they always seem to play well. And Gus may be coaching for his job at that point. Now, if Auburn is out of it, which could happen, their schedule's difficult. If they've already got 3 or 4 losses, then it's probably going to be a beat down by Alabama. But if Auburn is still somehow alive in the SEC West race, it could be a dogfight. So I don't know if I could say one game. I just would say maybe it's a 3-game season for me. I do think Alabama should have enough because Mississippi State and Starkville, they've got Tommy Stevens, a first-year starter, but they lost so much talent on defense. They'll still be pretty good, but I still think Mississippi State won't have enough bullets in the gun, so to speak. I just think overall, the 3 games to watch are at Texas A&M on October the 12th, and then of course, the first game in November against LSU, because that's always kind of the month that defines Alabama football, November the 9th. But they, once again, they get a bye. They get the bye before LSU, so they get a bye before 2 of their biggest games, Texas A&M and LSU, and then of course November the 30th in Auburn, Alabama. So to me, it's a 3-game schedule, but I think Alabama is going to be double-digit favorites in all of them. If Tua is healthy, and then you keep that top 15 or 16 healthy defensively, I still think this Alabama team is going to be very tough to beat, because honestly, we didn't really talk about it a lot, but the kicking game I think is going to be better. It wasn't very good last year. I think Reichert's going to be the place kicker. Bulivas probably kicks off, and then just hope and pray, cross fingers, toes, everything, that what we saw out of Skylar DeLong in the spring carries over to games. You can't say it yet because it hasn't happened in a game, but Skylar DeLong looked much, much more comfortable this spring than he did a year ago. And then you've already got Jalen Waddle, who you know how good a punt returner he is. And then that opens up, the kickoff return. Waddle could be involved there. Henry Ruggs, Chet Darius sounds like, hell, they're going to have a lot of options at kickoff return. They're going to have plenty of talent. So, but the key is going to be, can Reichert place kick? Can DeLong be the punter? If this team's a lot better in the kicking game, then I think this Alabama football team can win the national championship.
Oh yeah, and I don't know about you, but when I was at the spring game, the crowd went nuts when Reichert got that 42-yarder.
Yeah. And I had seen him in all 3 scrimmages, and so including the A-Day game, and he gets excellent height on his kicks. And I'm just telling you, he's the first kicker to be signed at Alabama while they already had another under scholarship, and that's Bulivas. And I can tell you from the year before when he was being recruited, being at a closed scrimmage inside the Alabama's indoor facility due to weather. But after that scrimmage wrapped up, Nick Saban went over and talked to Will Reichert and his family for 15 minutes. So I knew that he really wanted Will Reichert. And Reichert has as much natural talent as anybody Alabama has signed in a long time, including Adam Griffith. I know Griffith had a career that was up and down, but he still made some huge kicks. But I think Will Reichert, if he's the real deal, and I've seen him, people I've talked to said he is. I know everybody at Alabama is always skittish about kickers.
Yeah.
But I'll just say this: if he's the J.K. Scott of place kickers, then Alabama is going to be in really good shape for the next 4 years.
Amen. And that's probably a good place to leave it. And Drew, I appreciate you coming on here and just let me pick your brain, because, well, you know what's funny about you, and I don't know if people realize this, but you don't look anything up. Everything is just from your brain. Like, that's just insane.
I will admit, on this podcast, I had to look up Stephon Wynn's name because I went completely blank. Just started channeling my inner Wes Neighbors saying 90, because Wes Neighbors, my colleague at 97.7 The Zone, he doesn't know names. He just knows numbers. So he just starts coming up asking you, telling you, well, I like 90. Well, that's who I was trying to think of, but it was Stephon Wynn.
You know what's funny?
Carolina, so.
What's funny is I've never heard you get stumped on anybody. So there's a first time for everything, I guess. Good Lord. I mean, it's crazy how you know all of it. And look, I know you're like a really, really busy guy. So will you please tell everybody what you're doing and where they can find you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm as everybody knows, this follows me on Twitter, and I appreciate all the follows and the conversation. I'm at Drew D977 ESPN. I always love the conversation. Even when it's can get a little heated, but so you can find me on Twitter there. You can follow my station at 977 ESPN, and Scott Tyson and myself bring everybody talking ball from 7 to 9 a.m. every Monday through Friday on the only sports talk radio station in the Rocket City, ESPN 97.7 The Zone. And we'll be at Hoover starting on Monday morning, bright and early, for the next week, all through Thursday, for the one and only SEC Media Days, where, as you know, Bama Bo gets a really, really can be a circus, but it's a fun time and a fun week for myself, Ryan Fowler, and all us radio folk.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, maybe I'll see you there. I'm going to try and go Wednesday, just for no reason. I just want to show up.
Absolutely. You'll probably end up out in the lobby when Coach Saban comes in.
I'm hoping for that. That'd be so cool.
Yeah, I'll be shocked if you don't get your picture with Tua Tagovailoa.
Well, I've been on this. I deserve it. I've been on the Tua train since the beginning.
Yes, you have.
Well, look, I really appreciate it, Drew, and I know you took a lot of time, so I appreciate it, and I hope you come back sometime. I'd really love it.
Yeah, we really enjoyed it, and good continued success with your YouTube channel and this podcast, and look forward to maybe seeing you. Hoover, don't hesitate to come down Radio Row and say hello, but continued success, and no problem. I'll come on anytime.
Thank you so much, Drew. Have a wonderful day. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That was so great. I mean, Drew is always one of those guys that just has all the inside information, and he answered everything I could think of to ask him. And Drew is just, I appreciate him so much coming on the show. And also, like he said, you can find Drew at DrewD977ESPN on Twitter. Give him a follow there, and he's a great follow. He is always posting good content. Also, he's a contributor to TiderInsider.com. Drew is everywhere. He's just everywhere. I think he's pretty much everybody's go-to source. So, couldn't appreciate him enough for taking the time to come on this show and answering some questions. That was a whole lot of fun. So, thank you again, Drew. Also, thanks to Soul Street Coffee for being the coffee of the Bama Bo Show. Look them up on Twitter. Give them a follow. It's at SoulST Coffee, and it'll take you to their website, soulstreetcoffee.com. They're doing a great giveaway right now, and all you got to do to enter is retweet this with the hashtag CF2019SSC. That's all you got to do. Retweet that with that hashtag, and I'll have it on here as well. Retweet it. Your name goes in. They're going to have a really big giveaway right before football season. Another way you can enter, go to soulstreetcoffee.com, put in the promo code BamaBo17. You can enter it that way as well. And they've got lots to give away. I'm telling you, it is a really, really good contest. So go enter it. You won't regret it. Also, a special thanks to Title Towel, the towel of the Bama Bo Show. You can look them up on Twitter at Title Towel. It'll take you to their website, whitwillsports.com. Get you some Alabama gear there. And a special thanks to Darren Duke for letting me use his song. As always, you can find him on YouTube at Cap Indito. That's CAPNDEDO. Cap Indito. Look him up on YouTube. Give him a follow there. He puts out a lot of really cool music. Great songwriter. So really appreciate him letting us use this song. Now, let's get to the winner of the contest, because that's what it's all about. So, without further ado, let's draw a name and see who's going to win my giveaway. This is exciting. All right, let's see. Oh my gosh! Mallory in Hawaii. Oh, Mallory won. That's awesome. All right, I'm going to get with you, Mallory, and get some info from you. And what you want is some Soul Street coffee, a Title Towel, and also some special gifts from yours truly, Bama Bo, as just a token of my gratitude for you being a listener. So I really appreciate that. And yay, Mallory, I'm so glad you won. That's awesome. Also, look me up on Twitter. It's at BamaBo17. Give me a follow there. You can look up my website. It's thebamabo.com. Everything that I do is posted there, whether it's Periscopes, YouTube, podcasts, Twitter. It's all on that page, so please look it up. You can also follow me on YouTube. I would greatly appreciate it. It's Bama Bo, one word, Bama Bo. Look me up there as well. And until next time, roll tide and peace out.
crimson through and through. He's crimson through and through. Really went south for game 2, rematch against LSU, battle on the bayou in New Orleans. Now listen, fans showed up from miles around to watch a freight train mow a honey badger down to a familiar sound in that Cajun town. They sang Rammer Jammer, Yellow Hammer, yeah. Give 'em hell, Alabama, yeah. And he's a good man, he's got fear in, as long as the tide is winning. It's in his blood and it runs down to the bone. From his t-shirt from 92 to his faded deuce, his loose tattoo. Need to ask for a look, and you just knew he's crimson through and through. He's a member of the Saban Nation, cut his teeth on an old